Anyone who opened this video already noticed the image first: an Amish kitchen with no thermostat, no monthly electric bill, and shelves loaded with preserved food. Tonight, you're going to hear about 20 methods that created that kind of life inside an ordinary home already standing today. 11 years ago, I stepped into a farmhouse near Millersburg. I spent nearly 20 minutes searching the walls for a thermostat. There was none. There never had been one there at all. Yet the family inside that house stayed warmer than I ever managed in my own home. That moment changed everything. It was the first time I realized the rest of America had forgotten something important. Deep down, most people already sense it. Grocery prices keep rising. Utility costs never stop climbing. Retirement checks grow smaller every year. Somewhere in the back of the mind, many people still remember grandparents talking about how families survived the 1930s without losing their homes, without losing pride, and without depending on government assistance. That memory is not nostalgia. It is instruction. For the past 11 years, I have traveled rural roads through Lancaster County and Holmes County, sitting at kitchen tables beside Amish families who never abandoned the habits modern society forgot. What they kept alive can reduce grocery expenses, lower utility costs, and place food on shelves for almost nothing. The final method in this series comes directly from a 1942 USDA field report, a document the federal government studied carefully and then quietly pushed aside for 83 years. Most of these projects can be completed during a single weekend inside the house you already own for less than $100 total. No new home is required. No large farm is necessary. Just a little time, a few dollars, and the willingness to remember old knowledge. Most people misunderstand the Great Depression entirely. They imagine breadlines, dust storms, and businessmen in suits leaping from windows. What they rarely picture is a group of plain farming families in Pennsylvania who survived those 10 years with savings still in the bank, pantries still full, and farms still untouched. Not one member depended on government relief. That is not folklore. It was documented history. In 1939, a black-owned newspaper called the Afro-American reported that Amish communities had handled their economic struggles during the Depression so effectively that federal agricultural officials should have been studying them instead of destroying crops and restricting production. Think carefully about that statement. A newspaper was openly telling Washington that the people being paid to solve the crisis should have been learning from these farmers instead. The first method is the quietest and most powerful of all because it costs absolutely nothing. Amish households follow a rule of 5 decisions before spending money. When something breaks or supplies run low, they do not immediately drive to a store. First, they ask whether they can make the item themselves. If not, they ask whether a neighbor can trade for it. If that fails, they consider whether cash payment is possible. If not, they ask whether a small loan can be repaid within the same season. And if every answer fails, they repair or repurpose something already owned. A story from the book Money Secrets of the Amish described one family with a pile of worn clothing most Americans would have thrown away immediately. Instead, the fabric was torn into strips, woven into rugs, and traded for a heifer, a living milk cow. 50 or 60 rugs created from old cloth became a year of milk production. The average American now discards roughly $300 worth of clothing every year. In Amish hands, the same pile could become food. The second method is placing rain barrels beneath every downspout. Amish communities never abandoned this habit while urban families were taught it belonged to the past. A standard roof during an average American rainstorm releases more than 600 gallons of clean water. That water is free. It does not appear on utility bills. In most areas of the country, no permit is required when it is used for gardens, livestock, or cleaning. A single barrel beneath one downspout can save the average homestead between $40 and $100 each year in water costs, while also providing reserve during drought conditions. Conservative Amish communities still collect rainwater exactly as their grandparents did during the Depression, when municipal water simply was not affordable for many rural households. The third method carried the unusual name coffee soup. It sounds strange until it is tasted. During the Depression, stale bread was never wasted inside Amish kitchens. Women tore old bread into pieces, poured hot black coffee across it, added a little cream or milk, sometimes a spoonful of sugar if any remained, and served it as breakfast. They called it wet toast. It used old bread. It used leftover coffee, and it filled a working man before he walked out toward the barn. Amish families in Pennsylvania still prepare this meal today. I ate it myself last spring in a kitchen near Bern. The woman who served it explained that her grandmother prepared the same breakfast every morning during the Depression, and her family never experienced hunger once. The lesson was never really about the recipe itself. The lesson was that no edible food ever entered the trash. The next methods reveal something modern industries would rather people forget. The fourth method is the home root cellar. This is where the attack on self-sufficient food storage truly began. Before the 1950s, nearly every rural American home contained a root cellar, either underground or partially buried. Inside, temperatures stayed between 32 and 40 degrees year-round without electricity. Potatoes, carrots, beets, turnips, cabbage, apples, and winter squash could remain preserved for 6 to 8 months inside a properly built root cellar with absolutely no energy usage. Amish communities never stopped using them. A standard root cellar costs less than $400 in materials when the digging is done personally, yet it can store more than 1,000 pounds of food. Compare that to a chest freezer costing around $600 to purchase and roughly $150 each year to operate. The moment electrical power disappears for more than 2 days, everything inside can be lost. Root cellars did not disappear after World War II because they stopped functioning. They vanished because appliance manufacturers needed Americans purchasing refrigerators and freezers instead. The fifth method is canning, not the decorative suburban version shown on television cooking programs. This was Depression-era canning where one family preserved between 400 and 700 quart jars during a single summer. Research from the Lancaster Farmland Trust showed that Amish and Mennonite women during the 1930s handled the canning process, tracked household consumption, and controlled family budgeting. Grocery store visits became almost unnecessary. Flour and sugar remained the primary outside purchases. Nearly everything else came from gardens, orchards, smokehouses, or local trade systems. A quart jar of green beans canned at home costs about 30 cents. A store-bought can now cost more than $2. Multiply that difference across 400 jars and the savings exceeds $600 in a single season, while producing food better than anything sealed in metal cans. The sixth method centered around the kitchen wood stove. One appliance handled 4 different jobs simultaneously. It cooked meals, it baked bread, it warmed the house, and through a back of stove coil connected to a holding tank, it also heated water. One wood stove removed 4 separate expenses at the same time. The Amish preserved that design because it worked efficiently. Modern America was pushed toward 4 different machines instead, because 4 machines create 4 bills and 4 future replacements. But the kitchen once handled far more than cooking and heating. It also produced many of the necessities a household depended on, beginning with soap. The seventh method was the soap kettle. Lye made from wood ash combined with rendered animal fat creates soap. That was the complete formula. During the Depression, Amish families produced their entire yearly supply using materials that cost virtually nothing. A full year of soap for a household of 6 people required almost no money at all. Today, that same family spends more than $400 every year on soap, detergent, and household cleaners. The ash left behind from one winter of heating provides enough lye for an entire year. The eighth method was the kitchen garden, and this is where the numbers become serious. Studies comparing Amish agriculture with modern conventional farming found Amish methods generate greater yield per acre, consume less energy, and produce harvests free of chemicals. An average Amish farm in Wayne County measures 109 acres. The average American farm covers 434 acres. Amish families operate on roughly 1/4 of the land while still supporting 7 or 8 people with additional surplus available for sale. The key is diversification, rotation of crops, fertilizer from animal manure, and preserving seed stock. A backyard garden covering 1/4 acre and managed using these principles can grow more than 1,500 pounds of vegetables during a single growing season. Growing food solved only part of the problem. Whatever could not be produced was exchanged through trade. That became the ninth method, barter. The Amish do not remove money entirely. They simply reduce dependence on it. Eggs become milk. Milk becomes honey. Honey becomes lumber. Lumber becomes labor. No middleman, no paperwork. Just neighbors helping neighbors the same way Americans once did for 200 years before every exchange moved through banks and tax documents. The 10th method is what I call the family economic unit. This is the difficult one for modern society to hear. During the Depression, an Amish household was not built around one worker supporting 4 consumers. It functioned as 7 or 8 producers, each person holding a clear role with real value. Children fed chickens by age 6. They milked cows by age 8. They handled horse teams by age 12. They were not viewed as laborers. They were apprentices, learning the skills required for self-sufficient adulthood. Once children were removed from meaningful household work and transformed into full-time consumers, the financial burden crushing American households today began growing rapidly. If you already own a home and think these ideas apply only to people building from the ground up, keep listening because the next section was designed specifically for existing houses. It is the part I wish someone had explained to me 40 years ago while I was mailing checks to utility companies across 3 counties. The 11th method is the cold pantry retrofit. It can be completed during a weekend inside nearly any home built before 1980. Locate the north-facing wall in a basement or the interior side of an attached garage that never receives direct sunlight. Build a small insulated room against that wall. A space measuring 6 foot by 6 foot is enough. Install 1-inch foam board insulation across the walls and ceiling. Add a small outside vent that opens during winter and closes during summer. From October through April, the temperature inside remains between 35 and 50 degrees without electricity. That creates a free walk-in cooler. Amish families in Ohio use this exact setup inside dotty houses, the smaller homes built for grandparents living on family property. My own version cost $170 in materials and has stored garden harvest through 3 winters without consuming a single kilowatt of electricity. The 12th method is the window quilt. Before fiberglass insulation became common during the Depression, families stitched heavy fabric panels and hung them over windows at night. A normal double-pane window loses nearly 10 times more heat than the surrounding wall. An insulated curtain made from old blankets, batting, denim, or canvas reduces that heat loss by 60 to 70%. The material cost stays below $20 per window when secondhand fabric is sewn personally. In a typical home with 12 windows, yearly heating expenses drop between $300 and $400. Amish homes in Lancaster have used this method for more than 100 years. Saving heat means little if water still drains money away. That leads directly into the 13th method, the gravity-fed water system. Any existing home with a roof and yard can use it. Rainwater from downspouts flows into an elevated storage tank. Even a 55-gallon drum raised 6 foot above ground on a sturdy platform creates enough pressure to operate a garden hose, fill watering cans, or supply a slow-drip irrigation system. No pump is needed. No electricity is required. No utility bill arrives. Amish communities and older Pennsylvania settlements have operated entire farms using this principle for generations. The 14th method is the clothesline. It sounds simple, but the average electric dryer costs between $120 and $200 each year to operate, while also shortening the life of every piece of clothing placed inside it. A clothesline costs around $15 and lasts 30 years. Multiply $200 annually across 30 years. That equals $6,000. Disappearing simply because hanging clothes outside became viewed as inconvenient. The 15th method is the bread starter. A wild yeast starter combined with flour, water, and air costs almost nothing and survives indefinitely. A homemade loaf baked from starter requires roughly 30 cents worth of ingredients. A comparable loaf, purchased at a grocery store, costs between $5 and $7. A family eating bread twice daily saves between $1,400 and $2,000 every year by baking at home. Amish women have preserved identical starter cultures for more than 100 years, handing them from mother to daughter the same way other families pass down jewelry. Bread may fill the table, but protein must come from somewhere else. That leads to the 16th method, the simple smokehouse. Any homeowner with a small backyard can construct one for less than $80. A smokehouse is only a compact insulated structure with a firebox below and a vent above. It preserves meat from 6 months up to a full year without refrigeration. During the Depression, refrigerators remained luxuries beyond the reach of many rural Americans. The smokehouse allowed families to preserve pork from autumn hog, butchering through winter and into spring. Amish families in Holmes County still smoke bacon and ham using the same process today. One hog produces 300 pounds of preserved meat. No electricity, no grocery store, no middleman. The 17th method is the herb apothecary. Amish communities never abandoned the use of herbs, poultices, and salves for common illnesses, and modern research has supported many of those practices. Doctors treating Amish patients documented requests for alternative remedies, such as burdock leaf poultices used for pain regulation, and many treatments showed measurable physiological effects. A small herb garden containing 12 to 15 plants handles most household first aid needs for under $30 each year. Compare that to the cost of the average American medicine cabinet. The 18th method is what Amish families call the wood ash garden. The 18th method was the wood ash garden. Ash from a household stove or fireplace becomes potash, a natural fertilizer loaded with potassium and calcium. Spread across a vegetable garden during early spring, it raises soil pH levels, destroys slugs, and nourishes growing plants. Every winter, free fertilizer sits waiting inside the stove. The global chemical fertilizer business expanded into an industry worth more than $200 billion. And that system depends on people forgetting the solution was already resting in their fireplaces. The 19th method was the community work bee. When Amish families need a barn constructed, they do not hire contractors. Word spreads through the community, and on the chosen day, somewhere between 80 and 200 men arrive together. By sunset, the barn stands complete. Encyclopedia Britannica documents these gatherings as continuing symbols of Amish craftsmanship, industry, tradition, and community cooperation. The price is simple: shared meals and the understanding that every family shows up for the next neighbor in need. Nothing prevents American neighborhoods from doing the same thing. No law forbids it. The habit was simply forgotten. Imagine 12 households spending one Saturday every month cutting firewood, repairing roofs, or preserving food together. Each family could save thousands of dollars every year while rebuilding a type of community no institution could ever remove. Before explaining the 20th method, there is one important thing to understand. Everything uncovered from Amish kitchens and forgotten federal archives connects together. The 5-question principle that stops spending before it begins. The rain barrel collecting 600 gallons of free water. The coffee soup. The root cellar storing 1,000 pounds of food for less than $400. The summer spent filling 400 jars. The wood stove handling 4 separate jobs at once. The soap kettle. The wild yeast bread starter. The wood ash fertilizer costing nothing at all. The kitchen garden feeding a family of 8 from 1/4 acre. The barter network. The cold pantry retrofit that homeowners can build in a single weekend for $170. The insulated window quilts. The gravity-fed rain tank. The clothesline. The backyard smokehouse costing under $80. The herb apothecary. The community work bee. Then comes the 20th method. The direct task circuit from the Belmont Solar Project. The cellar vent from the absorption refrigerator design. The $50 wall from the Trom wall system. The Burkholder reservoir from the Sand Battery Project. The smoke shelf from the Hans Herr design. Every one of those pieces came out of years spent traveling through Lancaster County and Holmes County. All of it was eventually gathered together, room by room and season by season, in the exact order Amish families actually use it. The system became known as the Amish home system, but the most important piece of all came from what Walter Cole Morgan documented in 1942. That single community structure carried Amish families through the entire Great Depression, with money still in the bank and without one member accepting government relief. This final method came directly from the 1942 Walter Cole Morgan field report mentioned earlier. Cole Morgan worked as a researcher for the United States Department of Agriculture Bureau of Agricultural Economics. In 1939, the department launched the Rural Life Studies program, assigning him to study the Old Order Amish living in Lancaster County. His report, titled Old Order Amish of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, later became known among Amish scholars as the foundation point for Amish studies as an academic field. It remains a primary government document. Buried inside its pages was a conclusion federal authorities openly admitted contained an answer the rest of the nation needed. Cole Morgan recorded that throughout the entire decade of the Great Depression, Amish families in Lancaster County maintained stable homes, kept savings in the bank, and rejected both state and federal relief programs. Not as political protest, but as the natural result of one specific economic principle. They had created what he described as a mutual aid economy. Whenever one family suffered disaster, whether a barn fire, medical emergency, or failed crop, the community did not send charity through an organization. Instead, they organized what remains known today as an alms collection. Every household contributed a certain amount based on its ability to give. The collected money was delivered directly in cash to the struggling family during the same week. No insurance company participated. No bank handled it. No government agency processed forms. No interest existed. No paperwork appeared. No waiting period delayed help. That becomes the 20th method. Build a local version of this system on your own street with neighbors you already know. It does not require a church. It does not require religion. It only requires 12 to 20 households willing to contribute $20 or $30 each month into a shared emergency fund managed by one trusted neighbor under a single rule. The money exists only for emergencies affecting any family in the group. A broken furnace? A sudden medical expense? Funeral costs? A roof damaged by storms? Whatever crisis appears, the fund responds. No paperwork, no interest, no insurance adjuster. Amish communities have operated this way for more than 300 years. The system survived the Great Depression without collapsing. It endured 2 world wars. It endured every recession and every period of inflation because it never depended on institutions that could be defunded, devalued, or denied. It depended entirely on people living within walking distance of one another. Federal officials studying this system in 1939 openly wrote that Amish farms deserved investigation because they might reveal a process simpler and less complicated than the New Deal itself. That investigation never happened. The method was not ignored because it failed. It was ignored because systems functioning without Washington make Washington less necessary, and no institution willingly finances its own irrelevance. That is the real suppression, not a law written in a book, but a study quietly placed aside. This knowledge disappeared not because it stopped working, but because somebody earned more money once people forgot it existed. If these ideas matter to you, pass them along to someone in your family. Talk about them. Keep them alive. The moment people stop depending entirely on the system is the moment the system loses control over them. Please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.